Take 197. Click. Hi, this is Tim the Worship Guy, and today I'm interviewing Tina Kreischer.
Hi.
And Tina is a certified behavior specialist, and she's going to be talking to us about something called DISC. Now, before we get to the details of DISC, Tina, what is it that you do?
Well, what I really love doing, Tim, is that I like to train people to build stronger relationships through good communication.
How do you use this DISC tool?
Well, DISC is actually a model of behavior. So it helps us to understand why people do what they do.
Okay. So from a worship standpoint, I've got a team of volunteers, professionals, and people of all these different kinds of mixes and attitudes and interests and behaviors and whatever you want to call it. And so how would something like learning about DISC benefit us?
Well, I think it's very useful because first of all, you'll get people in the right positions doing things where they're going to thrive instead of where they're not going to feel fulfilled. You can teach people to understand the others on their team. It can also help make sure that you've got people in the position to do things where they're more responsible and more likely to be successful.
How does it help us understand each other?
How does it help you understand each other?
Yeah.
Because you understand motivations and perceptions.
Okay, now Tina, I know that the letters DISC all mean something, and so tell me about the D.
Okay, well the D is the director, and that person is the extroverted
You mean the director up front, like the person who's in charge?
Kind of, yes. But the D is a person who is an extrovert and a go-getter and somebody who is mission-oriented.
Okay, so somebody kind of driven?
Definitely.
Okay, all right, the I. What's the I stand for?
The I is the imaginative. That's the person who is an extrovert, who is more connection-based. So that person's in the center of a crowd, loud, happy, having fun, and that's the I.
I have a few of those people, and they're pretty easy to pick out. Yeah. Okay. You have a little bit of that mixed in with you.
Little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I thought so. Okay. Okay. DIS. What's the S?
The S is supportive. That's the person who is more of an introvert, but they're also connection oriented. So they're the supportive, encouraging person, kind of behind the scenes.
Okay. So like possibly a sound tech person, or somebody who's helping with gear, or somebody who's playing an instrument more to support the team but not really wanting to be a front person.
They don't want to be a front person. They're back there behind the scenes. They're winding up the cables. They're helping put things away. Those are your behind the scenes people.
Okay. DISC. What's the C?
The C is the conscientious person. That's the guy you want at the sound booth.
Okay.
They are the introverted, mission-based person who is really good at all the details, and they're careful about getting things just right.
Okay, so if I'm asking somebody to do scheduling or something like that, or to check chord charts, take care of things, that's the kind of person I want to do?
Oh, yeah.
Use? Okay. What about, which is the person that I would want to use to just check up on people, make sure everybody's healthy and their families are doing okay? And
your S would be very happy to do that.
Okay.
They're the ones who are going to notice if somebody's missing and not at rehearsals. They're going to notice if somebody seems a little quiet or they're down. They're very concerned about other people.
Okay, okay.
Kind of a mother hen.
And which is the person that's going to be like the person who tends to be late a lot, and they're getting their gear ready after everybody's started because they were talking? Who's that?
That's the I. The I got a phone call just as they were ready to leave for practice and had to talk to somebody who was an old friend, and of course didn't think to call them back later. The I is the person who's easily distracted by other people.
Okay, but on the flip side, they're also really good with connecting with people, like in a crowd, and emotionally maybe drawing people in and saying, kind of opening the door, hey, let's worship the Lord.
Definitely. That I would be a great person to welcome people,
Mm-hmm.
because they'll get people's attention.
Okay, so each one of these kind of has a strength and then a weakness around on the back too. And if we can understand that, we might be able to understand why we are the way we are, and maybe be able to have a little bit more grace for each other, I think.
Right.
If you're putting people in positions maybe of leadership,
Mm-hmm.
to help select the kind of person with the right approach that's going to blend with the responsibility and also with the leadership that they're maybe working for, and the people that they're having to work with, or something like that.
But what I also work with teams is for them to understand each other, because sometimes it's really hard for a D to understand why an S is the way they are, and why they don't move as quickly, why they don't do the same things, think through things like a D.
Right, because as perfect as my worship people are, as full of godly, loving, Jesus-styled grace as we are, we sometimes, do this.
Mm-hmm.
And so by working with you, that can help us kind of build some bridges there.
Definitely. I love working with teams because everybody can start to understand where the other one's coming from,
Mm-hmm.
and be able to respect them in their roles once they realize what their strengths are.
Okay, yeah. And I could see how you could use this if you're in a situation where you're selecting somebody to lead a group. Okay, what's the specific strength that role needs, or who are they going to be working under, or who's going to be working underneath them? That makes sense to me. But
and who to have talk to who.
Okay.
To know how to talk to someone. If your I is always late, how do you approach the I? How do you talk to him?
How would you approach the I?
First of all, anybody who is on the connection side, you don't start with, hey, you're doing this wrong. You start with, how's it going? It's more of a personal approach first.
So you need to connect relationally before you move into the...
Right. Where if it's the mission-motivated person, they're not as concerned with that connection. They want to get to it and get moving.
Okay, by mission-motivated, you mean what?
The director or the conscientious, the two that are more concerned with accomplishment.
Okay. So how would you approach which is the other one? We did the S, you just said the D and the I. So with the C, how would you approach the C if there's an issue?
The C wants to know exactly what they're doing wrong, how they can do it right, and they want to know what is expected of them. It's important to them to have good, strong, quality answers.
Okay, flip this around. How would, let's say you want to build build somebody up, how would you approach the D to encourage them?
Well, what Ds typically need most is respect.
Mm-hmm.
So they want to be respected, and so if you can let them know that you appreciate their talents and their skills and the things that they do well, it can make them feel good about what they're doing. They're accomplishing what they're setting out to do.
So that's a value that matters to their heart. What about the I?
The I wants to know that you appreciate who they are, what they're doing, and that it's fun.
Okay, fun matters to the I.
Fun matters to the I.
Okay, as you know. Okay, the S. If I want to build up the S, how do I approach the S?
The S wants to be appreciated because they're behind the scenes, and a lot of times they do a lot of self-sacrificing.
Mm-hmm.
They just want to be acknowledged. They want to be valued.
Okay, but do they want that to be a public acknowledgement, or do they want that to be a private acknowledgement?
Private.
Okay, because you said that they're a little bit more introspective, or a little more contemplative. What about the C?
Now the C is very detail oriented.
Mm-hmm.
So the C wants to know what they're doing right, exactly what they're doing right.
Okay.
So if you can give them straight up details, hey, when you hit that A, it was perfect.
Okay, all the details.
I know that's just a little thing.
All the detail. Oh, I understand. I'm a D.
C.
I'm a C. I want to get that right.
Yeah. Well, you're the CD,
because I'm
so
a
it works.
C. Okay. All right. How would someone like you come in and be able to work with my team?
Well, it depends. There's a lot of different ways I could work with you. I could work with you as a leader. I could work with your team as a whole group. I could do one-on-one coaching.
Okay, we'll start at the beginning. If you're working with me as in my role as a worship pastor, what benefit? Well, I know what the benefit is because it would help me understand people and all that, and communicate with them. But what would you do with me?
Coach.
Okay, coach me to what?
Well, first of all, I do an assessment of you, and I would like to do an assessment of your whole team.
Okay, so you do that so I could kind of understand everyone, and then how would you coach me from that point on?
I would talk to you about how to communicate to everybody.
Okay. All right.
For example, if you're talking to a D or a C, you don't ask them, how are you feeling about this? How does this song make you feel?
Mm-hmm.
They may not know how they feel. You can ask them instead, what do you think of this song? They know what they think, but maybe not what they feel.
So they may have to kind of process it before they come up with that.
Right, and the I and the S, you can ask them, how do you feel about this? How does this song make you feel? They know what they feel, they may not have thought it through yet.
Okay, all right. Okay, what if you'd be working with a team? What would you do?
With the team, I would also start with assessments,
Mm-hmm.
and then I would do a training with them, just like I would with you one-on-one, but a training about each of the different personalities and how to appreciate the strengths that each one has. And then we would talk about how to get along.
Yes, we all need a little bit of that.
And we'd work on team building.
Okay, all right. Now, a little bit of different question. If I would apply the DISC approach to how I would build a worship set, how could I use that?
What do you mean a worship set? You mean your
I'm
songs?
wondering. It's not just people on the platform who have the DISC thing, or everybody in the congregation does, and so different people, it sounds like, are going to be looking for a different thing in worship. I mean, we're all at different places, and the Holy Spirit works with each of us, wherever we're at. But we also have some of these different values of things that matter to us, and the I person, they're going to be looking a lot more about the experience of the worship time, compared to the S person who's looking for the relational connection. Is that
right?
Would that be
right,
okay.
exactly.
All
and
right.
Your C
Yeah.
is going to be probably more geared toward what were the words in the songs we sang, were they done well? They're going to be looking at those details.
Okay.
And the D will probably look at some of those details as well, but they're going to think more big picture, where the C will think smaller picture.
Okay. So, I mean, I can see how that would affect when I'm creating a worship set, or what I'm going to be saying, or the scripture I'm going to be using, or even the images of all the details of the service. That may help me if I think, okay, do I have a connection point for the people who are kind of the S, the people who are the C's, the people who are the D. I can think through the different components of the service. I think that could actually give me a handle to try to include everybody in the congregation instead of people who are just like me.
Right. You want everybody to be able to leave there feeling like they've been met.
Right, and that's so important.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Tell me, what makes you excited about teaching the DISC model?
I love teaching the DISC model. I'm very passionate about it.
Really?
Like I told you earlier, I don't think you could pay me not to talk about it.
Okay.
I love DISC because it helped me understand me. When I was younger, I decided that I was unacceptable as a person because I did not understand what my parents, my Sunday school teachers, my mentors, grown-ups were trying to just prepare me for the outside world. And instead, what I perceived it as was just plain not being good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And so I decided I need to become someone else. So I pretended to be someone else because I thought that's what they wanted from me. And it wasn't, when I studied psychology in college, I understood a little bit more about, we're all different and that's okay. But it wasn't really until understanding DISC fully that I went, I am not just okay. I am who God created me to be because He has a purpose for me as who I am. And so I learned to accept myself and accept others too, without judging them, but just appreciating the uniqueness and how amazing God made people.
So you learned firsthand for yourself the value of this, and you want to see other people benefit from that.
Certainly, and I don't want any other mom to think her child is hopeless, and any other child to think they're hopeless, or you know, not going to succeed in life.
So you see DISC as an avenue to hope.
Definitely.
Okay, well that sounds good. Can you give me a quick sample of what it would look like to have you come to my team?
Oh, sure.
Okay, I mean, stand up, do an introduction.
Okay. Hi, I'm Tina Kreischer, and what I do as a certified behavior specialist is teach people how to understand other people and to strengthen their relationships through strong communication. What I like to tell people is the story about my dad. You see, my father was born Amish in a little tiny community in Ohio where all the surrounding people spoke English, but his community spoke Pennsylvania Dutch, which is part of the German language. And one day when he was just a little boy, he was only about 4 years old, he saw some workers working on the road, and so he decided to go out, sit in the grass, and watch them work. And while he was watching them, he came up with a question, and being a very curious little boy, he asked, and they ignored him. So he asked again, but louder, and they ignored him again. Finally, he asked one more time, and one of the men said something, and that's when it really dawned on him. My dad understood that they were speaking one language, and he was speaking another. And until they could both speak the same language, there would always be a barrier between them, and they couldn't communicate. He was so overwhelmed by this that he ran home, threw himself on his bed, and he bawled. And he begged his parents that night to teach him how to speak English so he could communicate with the rest of the world. What I do is I teach people how to communicate with the rest of the world. We're not just a director, just an imaginative, just a supportive, or just a conscientious. We're actually a blend of these things. For example, I'm an IS, which means, yes, I'm the outgoing person, but I'm also the supportive person who's behind the scenes. Both of those are they're very people-oriented. So I love people, and I love to work with people and help them to understand and know more people. And that's why this is so important to me.
Thank you, Tina, for sharing DISC with us. I can see how it would apply to Worship World and all that we do. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, Tim.
How would people connect with you if they wanted to find out more?
They can go to my website, tinakreischer.com.
How do you spell Kreischer?
Kreischer.
Okay. And which personality type is it that wants to know all those little details?
That's the C, Tim.
Yes. I'm a C.
I'm very good at it too.